No,
It's all voluntary.
certainly, I do a radio show now. I don't get paid for it. The payment is just being able to do something that you just. I mean, all I wanted to be when I grew up was a disc jockey. That's all I ever wanted to be in high school and even junior high, grade school. I just used to sit and stare at my radio in my bedroom. Very reclusive child I was, but I used to just, my idols weren't John Glenn and firemen, and they were like Peter C. Cavanaugh, Bob Dell, and Steve Whaley, and Johnny Irons. These were, to me, these were heroes. So I forgot the question. What the hell was I babbling on about? No, it was a very serious point there. Oh, so anyway, yeah, by hook or crook, obviously, as I grew older, there's no way I could, being a DJ wasn't a viable thing anymore because basically they were just paid, they were just minimum wage, dipshits anymore because they had no control. Like we spoke of earlier, we
had to play what they were told to play.
You had the arbitrons decide. You couldn't bring in a band. You couldn't flip a record. So I had no interest in that. Yet they still had public radio where we could do our thing. I still do with this soul show, and certainly did back then. So that was the payment. God,
well, it cost you money. The thousands you spend
exactly,
every year.
But willingly,
willingly, you were going to buy it anyways.
I mean, had they thrown money at us, we'd have certainly accepted. But geez, I mean, that was part of the deal. It's like, what? I don't get paid, but I get to play whatever I want.
Say what I want.
Sign me up.
Yeah, say what I want. Do what I want every week.
Well, I don't think we could say what we wanted.
Well, up to a point.
Well, it usually fell on the specific DJ. I like say when I did the show with Jim McDonald. I always did the first set, and we I think we did 3 sets each, and I would backtrack and identify my songs and my sets, and Jim would play his sets. As the McDonald Hamper show wore down, Jim got less and less enthusiastic. He really did not like hardcore music, and that was the majority of stuff we played. That's what was out, and that's what we were doing. And he grew to like it less and less, and so I started taking over. Basically, I programmed the whole show at that point. In the last year, Jim was there, but basically it was usually the disc jockey. And when Jerry came aboard after Jim left, he did all his own sets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just whatever you went out and bought, whatever was new that week. You go out to Doug's, and you ask him, what came in, or what's this, or what's that, and he, this, and I mean, it got, towards the last few years, he would just lend me the demos. You'd get, his copies of new releases or whatever, and it was great. But you were going to go out and buy that stuff anyways. But you just try to find the newest, and then you go play, something old. But I mean, you spent thousands and thousands of dollars every year.
I used to send away for all kinds of 45s and cassette tapes through Maximum Rock and Roll. The review section would review something. If it sounded interesting, it would always have the address and say send $2.50 or $3 to the and I just keep them going out. So every week I'd have a single or 2 or 3 coming in the mail. That it's I mean, it'd be so great because even these things were so rare, just minute, that even Doug didn't have a chance of picking them up. And that's how we kept the show fresh. Just to get reliant on any kind of pattern or obviously there were bands who Warren being played almost weekly. Obviously the Black Flags and the Dead Kennedys and the Circle Jerks. I mean, some of these later on in the show, bands like the Replacements, the
Dickies,
you could play almost every week because they warranted. They had so many great songs and they were so important, But the majority of the other time, it was just here's a band called Worm Shit, from Spokane, here's a band called Adolf Hitler's Dick, from Des Moines, and it wouldn't be any good, but the whole idea was to like, here, we'll throw it out.
Yeah.
Maybe it's no good to us, but maybe it's good to you, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, we weren't the be-all and end-all
Right.
of taste, you know?
Right.
It was just like, we'll throw this shit at the wall for you, and you decide what you want to, you know, lick up and what you want to piss on.
Well, for me, I always, you want to come out your first set and your first song, you want to come out just with a blast, your favorite song that week or whatever, something new that just really you've been listening to all week. It's got its hooks in you, and you know, really just come out after that theme song fades out, just like boom, you know. And then
Sort of defines what you're trying to do.
yeah, and then but you know, and I learned all mine, you know, from Ben. I mean, I from listening to him, and by the time I got on board, it's like, well, I know how this works because he had it, you know. And it was always fun, like, you know, you mentioned before, like to play the Monkees in between two hardcore songs or whatever. It just, I don't know, and always never be predictable, always, you know. And later on, well, when, you know, after Ben left, and I had guys like Brett Herron and Sean and Gordon, these guys would, you know, Brett would play polkas or some spoken word thing or a bowling record, bowling instructions or whatever, and it was great because those were the roots of the show. You could hear anything, and if there was a sense of humor to it, you know, it was good to go. But you did try to, you know, it wasn't just like you came down there and just play whatever you want to play. I mean, you worked all week on it, and you constructed it in your head, and then finally, the last couple of days before the show or whatever, you start, you know, and you go over it. It's like, well, you know, that sounds good, but I think I'll move that some other spot. I mean, you know, one you know, was segue into the other. It's like, oh yeah, that really, you know, it didn't sound. It may have sounded random, but it really wasn't. You know,
I was always very perfectionist about it. In fact, you know, I worked second shift at the shop, and I would come home every night, and I might spend the whole night. Well, yeah, you know, come home and have drinks for an hour, 2, 3, and just spend it just on one set. You know, just getting it perfect. Nah. But I never wanted it to sound that way. You know, I always wanted it to sound like, you know, it was going all over the place, like, eh. But it was very, to me, you know, I was a perfectionist about it, and I wanted it, it's like, I want this to go to there, and I want that, you know, it wasn't like, yeah, just take it, whatever, you know, here's a stack of records, put them on. That had driven me crazy, you know. So it was like choreographed chaos to me, you know. And I was very meticulous about it, and that's why, like, when the engineers would have trouble keeping up a wrong speed, it just blow my mind. Yeah. I get very angry, and that's why I started putting my whole sets on cassettes, because that way it was locked in, and, you know, I wouldn't have to, you know, bitch somebody out, you know.
And I can attest to his anger. I mean, he would blow a gasket down there.
Oh, I just
turn songs around, and he just
wasn't helping, you know, that I was blowing like about 2.5, you know. So I wasn't. Once I got agitated, I could go pretty crazy. You know, it was sort of like Phil Spector in the studio, or, you know, if I'd have had a gun, there'd be casualty.
Well, yeah, did you listen to it when I was doing this?
Well, of course I did.
I know.
To stand there just pointing at the speaker, you bloody bastard, you suck, you know. But, yeah, I listened.
Oh, yeah, you'd call me up all the time.
You piece of dog shit.
It didn't seem to happen that often. I mean, if I wasn't doing a show, it was because, you know, we were on a road trip somewhere.
That's what I was just going to say.
Or there was a period of time towards the end I got really sick for a couple of weeks, and I couldn't. You know, I was like on my deathbed or whatever. But no, most of the time, you know, if we were in town, we were doing the show. You know?
The only time I ever missed, I just really can't remember missing until I got canned. You know, and obviously then I became a listener. But I may have missed like one show a year because I had the flu or you know, just something came out. I don't know. But
I remember once you were in Hurley when you and I were doing the show.
Oh, I was up in the nut ward there for. Yeah.
I don't want to say that.
Oh, I remember because you had Doug in there. It was really sweet of you because I think you played. What did you play? I Want to Be Well by the Ramones. You know, I mean, now this is a thoughtful guy. You know, I'm up in the psych ward, 7th floor of McLaren, listening to Take No Prisoners. You know, obviously can't make the show, and he played I Want to Be Well by the Ramones. I mean, that's a buddy, man.
Well, I remember talking on the phone, and it's like, well, do you want me to tell people where you're at? And it's like, oh yeah, sure, I don't care. You know, tell them I'm crazy. No, I know what it was. You said, tell them I've got a growth on my rectum the size of an alarm clock or something like that, and that's why I'm in the hospital. It was something like that, you know. But it's like, no, just tell them I'm on.
No, I told you to tell
Nutwood.
everybody I was going in for a penis reduction. Well, let's not be confused on that point. I mean, I was unhappy
That he went.
that I wasn't there, but no, I mean, I knew I left the show in good hands, you know. I was blessed with two good co-hosts. I mean, Jim McDonald you couldn't ask for better, but you know, like I had stated, his attention sort of waned at the end, and we had this amicable parting where he just basically agreed. He's like, I've lost interest in it. And I said, well, I got this guy warming up in the bullpen, and Jerry, who I just met, and we've been discussing music, and I had the same enthusiasm about Jerry as I did when I met Jim McDonald, and got him to replace Ken. So Jerry just came in right off the bat. It was Hamper and Humphrey rock and roll law firm. I mean, just didn't miss a beat. And so when I did leave the show, to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I knew the show was in great hands, and Jerry, he, without me, he came more to the fore of what he was good at. I mean, obviously, I think my greatness probably dwarfed him, is that he couldn't step out of my shadow. No, I mean, you just did.
Well, it was your show.
You were forced to become.
When I was co-hosting, it was your show, and that's what
Yeah,
I looked at it.
and
I was there, and I did what I.
Then you became the ringleader.
And I had
you
to,
were the
yeah,
boss,
yeah.
and you had to set the tone. So
Yep.
you talked more. You became more irreverent. You let your humor come out more, I think. And then you got your sideshow Bobs.
A lot of them, yeah.
Doug
Earp
and,
and Al was there for a
cast.
while, and then like I said, Commissioner Gordon and Sean and Brett and all kinds of people. Aaron McCormick. They always had to wait till the next week. Ben was better at playing requests than I was.
I dutifully
Yeah,
played
it was-
requests, but I didn't bring in my whole record collection. In fact, I basically just bought what we're going to listen to on the show, but I always would make sure I kept a list. In the next week, anything that we got would be slotted in, I mean, obviously, and then that became the running joke. You remember, who was it, Misfits, Jesus Christ,
yeah.
we get these calls and play the Misfits, Misfits, And so, well, me and Jim McDonald started that, so we just got tired of all these requests to play the Misfits, so we would just play just any, like, sort of generic hardcore song and identify it as the Misfits, well, with a straight face, that was like, I want to shoot Ronnie Reagan by the Misfits,
It's a new demo, yeah.
And then we'd even play like Annette Funicello,
Yeah,
that's
it's new Misfits.
that's like Muscle, Bustle, Hustle by the Misfits,
Goes out to, yeah.
The guy called in last week. Well, the guy just called 10 minutes ago. One of the Misfits. There you go. That's Pleasant Valley Sunday by the Misfits. The way I looked at it, it's like there's only a small portion I'm going to like, and that doesn't make it good or bad, And like I say, I thought our job was to just throw it out there, just throw it out there. Obviously, we lean more heavily toward, the bands we like, but I mean, there was a lot of it that was, you got to be perfectly honest. At that time, there was a lot of redundant, hardcore stuff, but people would be passionate about it. They call up like, I got to hear some Adrenaline OD, I mean, I could take or leave that stuff because, to be honest with you, I couldn't tell it apart from, Jerry's kids or whoever else, So, but, if they wanted to hear it, they were going to goddamn well hear it, So you just threw it out there. That was our job, throw it out there. There was many bands we played that I didn't really particularly care for, or could even discern sometimes, but who was it for me to judge? What if I just played what I liked? I'd just be sitting there playing the Monkees and some Black Flag and the Replacements and stuff, but and the Flamin' Groovies or something. I mean, but no, the job was to get as much alternative shit out there and just throw it at the wall. Keep it coming by the barrel loads, by the truckloads, gobs, and just throw it. Make a collage, and people will pick out what they want. And then maybe they'll write those bands, maybe they'll look up those bands,
Or go out to Wyatt Earp and buy the album and help Doug's business, and
or if those bands come through on a tour, they'll remember hearing them. It's like, I'm going to seek them out. Do our part.
The problem, that's one of the reasons I didn't take requests. And like I said, Ben was good at that, and he would dutifully play them, and whether he liked it or not, I mean, he would play it. And that was one of the reasons why I wasn't real high on that myself, because I thought it would, it's like, it doesn't fit in with what I was going to play. But I would occasionally, but I always tried to play local music. If somebody sent in a tape, because we had little mail slots there, if somebody sent in a tape or whatever, sometimes I'd wince, and it's like, oh, this is really, but if somebody, was in a band and was practicing and playing out and went to the trouble of, because that's what the show was about. It was, it featured as often as possible local music, and so it's like, yeah, I don't particularly care for that song, but I'll play it anyways, and make somebody happy, because it would mean a lot to them. They were played on the radio alongside of somebody on a major label or minor label, or
I think that's a big point, is the local music. I thought
Hadn't
about
really
that,
talked
but
about
that, to me, that local music had to trump anything else. The local music, it just always took precedence, for me, and I'm sure you say, you come down and somebody would have dropped off a cassette with the secretary, or they'd mail it to us, or they get it to us through Doug or anything. But with me, that always went to the top of the heap. It just was given immediate notice in airplay, and and some of the stuff would just be god-awful noise, or the production values would be just horrendous, but yet it's like, look, man, this is what they're doing, and throw it out there. It's like, who am I to judge? Like, no, this isn't up to our lofty standards, because we had no standards. So and it was just, I always had a feeling that we had an important role. If people thought enough to send us this stuff, by God, they were going to hear it on the radio. It might only be once,
Right.
But, that was what the show was there for, is to give an illumination to all these people that had no chance, of,
Otherwise,
seeing their shit come to light.
And Ben mentioned John Zooks earlier, this station manager or whatever his position was, and he always liked that. He always liked doing local bands during those stereothons when you had to raise the money, or playing local music. And whenever we got in trouble, at least that was one of the trump cards I always used. It's like, we're playing local stuff and nobody else is doing that. And also, we'd use Doug, because he was an underwriter, and very few shows down there had a continuous underwriter. I mean, Doug underwrote that show for 16, 17, 18 years or something, however long, 15 or 16. So that was
Almost right off the bat.
So,
and we always did well on our, fundraisers. We always, consistently drew in like $300 or $400 a show, and some of them local shows were lucky to break 100. And don't kid yourself. The
audience,
spoke,
the audience that we had too. I mean, they weren't 40-year-old professional people. I mean, they were high school kids who could only give $5, or
the majority of them were just $5 donations, maybe 10. But there was so many of them. No way, no way in hell.
Well, it justified. I mean, we both had a music addiction and still do, and and it kind of justified it. But probably no, I don't.
I mean, I bought so many, just blindly bought just so many like hardcore singles, either at Doug's or Make Waves or School Kids, that I know there's no way I would have, because my tastes were rather, when all said and done, rather restricted in the hardcore form. I mean, I could only listen to so much of it, but I knew it was. We're talking from the years like '81 to '85. I mean, that's where it was at. The scene was hardcore, and I was into it. But most of the bands, I could give two shits about. Really. And I bought a lot of records, and they're all sitting in my basement. And anybody wants to come and
Worth
make me an
thousands,
offer, I got shitloads of rare stuff. Come on up and see me. Come on up and see Uncle Ben.
I'll cut
And
you
here's a
deal.
little punk cavalcade.
In sunny Sutton's Bay.
Yeah, I'll buy a beam. No.
listen to a lot of music. We do
We download music.
we do that horrible download thing. But, and not that we have to justify it, but Ben and I have talked about this a lot. The stuff we're downloading, you know, it's not like Britney Spears, obviously, and I don't even know who's popular nowadays, but it's just the stuff that a lot of it, you know, was never even re-released on a CD. It's all on vinyl anyways, and some guy just ripped a vinyl copy of something. I mean, it's so, you know, it's so obscure that, you know, not all of it, but most of what we listen to is, you're not going to find it anyways, you know, you're not, you know, so you can't buy it for the most part, and that's how I justify it. But
Well, most of the stuff I download is like by Dead Spades. I mean, they never had no rights anyway. They signed away their contracts long ago, and they're either dead or they never owned the rights anyway. So
Yeah,
it's
the
like,
record
who was
company,
going to see that? Who was going to see that money?
the record company
Or
took
they're
all
on
their money.
such preposterously small labels. It's like they don't even exist anymore. I mean, it's not like we're out there downloading, you know, I don't even know who's popular. I can't even name who's popular. You know, who Puff Daddy or,
You don't like Puff Daddy?
no, I like Puffy Nipples.
I haven't heard him.
You know, you're thinking of Chip Nipples.
I know what Chip Nipples is. Well, I guess you can't compare the two because, you know, we grew up during, like I said, the album days and the vinyl, and you had a gatefold and you had, you know, things to read, and the whole packaging was important. And while you're listening to this album, you're staring at the you know, the album artwork or who plays bass, and you know, that's why I can remember who played bass for this obscure band that I listened to back in '67, because that's what you did. You stared at this thing. I mean, I understand that independent record stores are going out of business left and right because people aren't, you know, going in and buying things, but you know, and I can see both sides of the coin. But I you know, I like analog, I like digital, I like the immediacy of being able to get things and file sharing, and you know, I see both sides. But you know, it can be wrong, but you know, I'm not gonna not do it.
You know, time marches on. You know, you
Things
can't
change.
romanticize the past. You know, and certainly we were brought up in a vinyl age, and you know, I still like vinyl, but you know, and record stores are becoming a thing of the past, and you hate to see that for friends we know that are in that business, but it's like that's the way it is. Look at like typewriters, you know. I mean, when I wrote, you know, I wrote on typewriter. Who would, every typewriter place in Flint, and I'm sure across the nation, is out of business, you know. Who the hell would buy a typewriter now, you know? That's just the way it goes, you know. Time marches on, and I don't really have any romantic, depressed feelings about, you know, record stores going under outside of, you know, people that I know who might be in that business. But it's like, look, I mean, you had a good run. It's like, you know, just the way it is, you know. I mean, it's like working in the factory. There's no rivet line anymore, you know. You know, you can't, you know, it's sad, but that's the way it is, you know.
It's nice to have the immediacy too of digital music. I mean, it's just it's right there, you know, and you can, through file sharing and things like that, you can hear things that you didn't even know existed. You know, you can go online, you can read somebody's article about something, or you can go to a blog and a guy posts an album that you didn't even know existed, and hear songs that you know. So you weren't going to go to the record store and buy that anyways because you didn't know that it was even there. You know, but if some guy wants to offer it up and, you know, put it out there, some obscure thing from '66 or '72 or whatever, you know, listen to it. I like it. Well, when you and I were doing the show,
Sidetracked there.
we didn't, very seldom, I mean, nothing was rehearsed, but sometimes
Oh,
it'd be
no.
like, well, let's talk about this, you know, or...
I don't even remember that.
Well, not very often, but occasionally it's like, you know, there's something going on, or remember this, or, you know.
Oh, well, yeah.
Let's talk about, but 9 times out of 10, you know, no, it wasn't rehearsed at all. It was just spontaneous, and that was what was nice about it.
I think that was always one of the important things. I know when me and Jim were doing the show, and this is, we would start, me and Jim McDonald would start, like, say the show, you know, it bounced around in time slots and stuff, but say it started at 10 o'clock, you know, which it did at some point. Say it started at 10 o'clock. Me and Jim would convene at my apartment at like 8 o'clock, and we'd start drinking and listening to music, you know, and talking, you know, and just, you know, shooting the shit, you know, and say, man, that's a great record, and I'll put something else on, you know. And so by the time we went to the station, my whole desire was to transfer my living room into the station. And, you know, we'd go down there and we would drink and we'd play records. And if Jim didn't like the record I was playing, he'd say it. He's like, man, that sucked, you know. And, you know, I was always proud of that. It was like an extension of my living room. I wanted to just transform it. And like Jerry says, there was didn't know what was coming on, you know. There was no pre-plotting what you were going to talk about, you know. And I just wanted always the show to have that feel of like two guys that are just having a few beers, sitting around in their rec room or their living room, whatever, you know, just having a good time playing records and talking about them, and either praising them, condemning them, or being indifferent. Well, I remember in the early days, Michael Moore used to, you know, come down and we'd throw him on the air, you know. Of course, Mike didn't really know much about, especially the kind of music we were playing, but I mean, he was always, you know, he's got a good sense of humor, so we would always utilize that, you know. I can't remember, at least when I was doing it, like guest hosts, like we were saying earlier, I'd never missed a week, you know. Maybe I'd missed one show a year due to some horrendous flu or something, but
I had a rotating group of co-hosts. It was difficult to do that show for long periods of time if you didn't have access to money. Ben and I both worked, you know, in the factories, and so we had a pretty good paycheck. But I had, you know, guys like that I've mentioned before. I mean, you know, it takes a financial commitment to come down there and you know, on a regular basis play music. So I would have, you know, Doug did it for a while, Al did it for a while, you know, and then, you know, different people would come in once in a while, but it took a financial commitment to come up with new music all the time, and some people did, you know. Some people, they were buying that stuff anyways, or they had been collecting for so long, because the show, you know, in 1993, if you're, you know, co-hosting the show, you could play a song from 1984 or 19, you know, whatever. I mean, it was okay, and so they had this, you know, a lot of this stuff.
well, Aaron mentioned guest hosts and stuff, and along that subject, you know, I can't really remember having any guest hosts, you know, outside. Obviously, there was you and Jim, you know, my partners, but can't remember entrusting that show or even wanting anybody else around it. And this reminds me of one huge difference me and Jerry have always had about the radio show. Well, and he didn't inflict this, you know, when we did the show. I mean, we pretty much ran it the way I wanted it run. But when you took over, but one of the things Jerry would do that I was just violently opposed to, I would have never put up with, is he used to have, you know, callers call in, or people would like be out driving around getting drunk, and he just let them come in the studio, and you could hear them in the background. And it, to me, we did that a few times when Jim McDonald was down there, or you would be down there, and I find it, it's like, I don't need this chaos, you know. I can go to the bar after the show and meet a bunch of loons and talk, you know. I was really, though I might be inebriated, I mean, I still had my focus on the show, and I didn't want any kind of distractions, you know. A bunch of people in the background, oh Lord Jesus Christ, you know, here, have another brew, you know. Fuck, I don't want that, you know, commotion, you know. And of course, generally, I'm not a people person.
Right, I think that's
probably
what it
know,
boils down to, yeah.
But I mean, I had a mission, and that was interfering with my mission they have. You know, and McDonald was that way. You know, he'd like, bring the people down. You know, it's like, look, we're not having a goddamn loving here. We're not, you know, this isn't, you know, Hare Krishna and the Beatles, you know.
I found most people respected it, though. I mean, and I didn't do it every week, but I would, if we had a band playing live, it's like, yeah, your friends
That's
want
a
to come.
different circumstance.
Your friends want to
but-
come down or whatever, we'll hang out. But, there would be sometimes like, 30 or 40 people in the studio or whatever. But, I would always tell them, before this red light comes on, when we're on air, I mean, everybody's got to shut up.
Would
Make
that
sure that
stop
they
'em, though?
understand.
Come
Yeah, for
on.
the most part.
They're all loaded, Jesus Christ. It used to drive me just crazy. I mean, because I would say the same thing. It's like, when that red light, 'cause this is our show, respect that, be quiet. And it's like, oh, well, welcome back. There's tell you. It's like, I don't.
You didn't like the confusion.
I don't work well with chaos and confusion. If I'm running the shots, I've got to be zoned in and doing my thing, and it's that way now. And I do,
No distractions.
when I do Soul Possession up here, a wonderful radio dial, WNMC 90.7. I just get irritated when other people that work in that office come in and start searching around when I'm on the air. So it's like, drives me crazy. Just about any band that was anybody, pretty much. I mean,
the
obviously,
local scene, yeah.
the Guildies were down there many a time. I mean, just name the bands that were on the TV show, pretty much.
Yeah,
all-
because like 4 times a year we'd have a stereothon, and we would have live bands playing then. But yeah, anybody who's playing out locally, come on down. And we had great engineers, and sometimes I'd bring down a separate engineer. One guy'd be engineering the show, and Mark Hudson did this a lot. And I mean, he could set up a band in 15 minutes and do a sound check in a minute, and they'd be ready to go and sound great. And so I'd bring down somebody to do that. And but one thing I do remember, there was a lot of great bands, a lot of great memories, but there was one memory I had when Repulsion played down there live. It was during one of the stereothons, one of the money raising times, and John Zooks was down there, and John was a great guy and very open-minded.
Are you saying he
but-
wasn't quite equipped for maggots in your coffin?
Well, he was okay as far as, like, obviously, I mean, because these guys, they play loud. I mean, they play loud, and it's a small space or whatever, and Zooks is like right in the middle of this hurricane of noise. And he was doing okay, but the band had, broken up for a while, and they kind of reformed, and Scott didn't remember all the lyrics, and so he had the lyrics from their album sitting on like this, this podium kind of thing.
And that's what he
kinda
took
like,
great exception.
And John would go over during the songs or whatever, start reading the lyrics or between the songs or whatever, and he wasn't he wasn't appalled by it. In fact, he thought it was pretty funny. But the fact that John Zook's reading the lyrics to "Maggots in My Coffin" or
Should have had him go
Black
out there and sing. That would have been a coup.
I just remember
See John
that.
Zooks out there, a pestilent decay, the boiling boils festering on my acne-ridden corpse.
But he was cool about it, That's what that was one of my fonder memories of live bands.
He was one tolerant mofo there.
Yeah, he was.
John Zooks.
He always went to bat for
But
it.
see, here's the irony. We're probably about the age Zooks was then, And
Yeah.
were the roles reversed, we would be tolerant
Yeah.
guys. But, I mean, we did look at him as like, man, that guy's an old square, when you're young, you just assume old people are squares. But now that we're older, we realize they're not. And John Zook was a good example of that. Just to look at him in his position, he was like, man, he's got to be a fucking square, but he wasn't, And if it wasn't for them, there would have been Take No Prisoners for about 4 months, and that would have been it.
Yeah.
And thus, there would have probably been no TV show, because there
Right.
would have been a lot less of a scene. So,
Right.
I mean, anyway, if you're in Flint today and you see John Zeus, go up and kiss him, Well, I think the Stones were one right off the bat that just said, no, we won't do it.
Mott the Hoople turned me down. Yeah.
Not the Hoople.
No, I mean obviously.
The Birds, when they were formed, no, we're not going to.
Well, any band wanted to play on the air. I mean, that was the nice thing about Flint bands is that they would pack up their stuff and go anywhere and play, whether it was on the radio or a club, and they didn't care if they got paid or not.
It was
And,
exposure.
It was what they were passionate about it, and that's what I liked about them. Is that all these bands are passionate.
Well, who are they going to wait around for? Channel 12 News to put
Right.
them on, or Saturday Night Live. I mean, this was exposure, and the same with the radio. It was their only means. 105 was going to play their cassettes.
They were always really, what I liked about them for the most part, they were all really, polite, and they would let you know how much they appreciated it. Because some of these bands I didn't really know that well when I first started doing, having live bands come down there, and, you would see they're on stage or whatever, and they're like this, but they come down there, oh, yeah, is it, I don't want to be in the way, I don't want to, take up any space, is this okay? And,
You
I
find
really,
out
really
that
appreciate it. And
several of them were gay. Yes.
this is my boyfriend.
This is what Jerry's trying to say. He's always beating around the bush. Jeez,
No,
I can't.
no.
I mean,
We had everybody down there.
obviously, my answer would be obviously maybe some more national acts. Would love to have the Queers swing by, or Screeching Weasel, bands that we knew. Well, of course, we did do Weasel. Yeah, we did
A
do
TV
Weasel,
show, yeah.
but not really in our studio or anything. I mean, it would have been nice to spend a whole. We did the Queers too, Devin R. Donnelly,
Right.
but we didn't really give them the Take No Prisoners treatment. Per
No, that
se.
was like a single camera shoot down towards the end of the show.
But as far as regionally or locally, I think we really aced it.
I think we covered
I mean,
everything.
there's some great bands, and there's some bands that weren't so great too. But I mean, once again, it's like the radio show. You can't judge; just throw it out there. The whole thing is give an illumination to these people. They're not going to get it anywhere else. This is the value of this. It's a tool and a gift. Use it.
Yeah.
Don't be exclusive. I don't like a band with saxophone, or I don't like I don't like hardcore. I don't like ska influence. It's like it doesn't matter what you like. Just throw it out there. Give it to the people.
My only criteria for, at least as far as the TV show goes, or went, and doing bands, as long as you were doing original material, you were practicing on a consistent basis and playing out on a consistent basis, therefore there was some kind of commitment to it and you were serious about it, yeah, we'll throw you on the TV.
That's a good point.
That was my
You
criteria.
couldn't just get a band together
No.
just to be on the show, just to say you did it. No,
No, and I didn't get bar bands or metal bands that were
No,
doing covers of
and
Motley
God
Crue
knows
or whatever.
there were people that wanted.
Oh,
And
tons of them.
I remember people whose feelings we had to hurt, because
Yeah.
they didn't really get it, They'd say, well, I see these bands on your show, and boy, to be honest with you, we blow them away, Well, proficient-wise, you probably would, but they wouldn't get it. It's like, well, these guys are writing their own songs. They're emoting their own shit, You guys are playing Steve Miller covers, They didn't quite make the association. Well, we got a couple originals. We got one like Rock and Roll Woman, Yeah, whatever, And you sort of had to, people would be bummed out. I'd feel bad for them, but they just would not get it,
No.
I'm thinking of somebody, and won't mention his name in particular, that.
Who? Oh, yeah.
Had a band, he could not make that, and he's like, Jesus, I thought you were my friend. Jesus, you get crap bands on there, we can rock the world, we can storm the stage, And it was like Spinal Tap or something,
A lot of things happened at the same time, that made the Flint scene vital. There was White Earp Records, and there was Joel Rash, and there was Take No Prisoners Radio, and there was, Capitol Theater.
the Ukrainian Hall and
And
Kish McGraw.
There was a lot of things that,
Phil
and that's why
Hines.
the scene was so good. A lot of people who were working hard, a lot of people who put a lot of time and effort doing it, and had a lot of talent. And there was something specific that I was trying to tie in, but I forgot it now. So it was what happens when you get older.
That you have a cyst on your penis?
Well,
I think that was it.
we should.
Well, just to put a bow on the whole thing, it's like it just was a vibrant time of my life. I was really, and here's the big thank you we need to extend is to Michael Moore. I mean, he's the one. I'm such a lazy ass. I would have never got my shit together to do it. I was out there at The Voice, and Moore said one day, he says, you're writing these reviews of these bands that I frankly never heard of, And I told him, I said, well, you know, it's a whole new world, man, rock and roll. They have this whole thing that obviously they don't play on 105 or reviewing Rolling Stone. And Moore, being the inquisitive person that he is, he says, oh, you know, really? And I said, yeah, talk about it. And he said, like a week later, he said, how would you, if I arranged this down at WFBE, how would you like to go on a show that spotlighted these bands, you know, every week? And I just thought, God, how could I say no to that? So anyway, we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to Mike. And anyway, it was a very vibrant portion of my life. You know, it perfectly. I was in my 20s, and you know, you need something, you know, when you're a young man to like pour your angst and love and energies into it, and that's what the radio show was for me. You know, and you know, I met a lot of just great people through it, and had a lot of great experiences. And I tell you, when I'll frankly tell you, when I got canned off the show, you know, to this day is still, that was a very hurtful, something was like jerked away from me, you know. And it wouldn't have hurt so bad, like my replacement not been a total, you know, piece of shit that didn't know anything about music, you know. But
He really took a nosedive.
yeah, this guy, had it been somebody who was competent, but had this guy walk in there and just, you know, total, you know,
Ruin everything that you had
he's
worked
a
on
total
for years.
dullard, you know. No, I think we all know how I feel about Jerry. Though it's outlawed in most states.
Yeah. But not in Sutton's Bay.